The arrival of the new Toyota RAV4 this year has brought with it some of the biggest changes in its 32-year existence, including a new exterior, a new-ish interior. But is all that enough to fend off the cheaper, flashier competition? Let's find out. With this new RAV4 being still based on the same architecture as the previous one, which is the ANCAP platform, it means that the overall design is very recognisable as a RAV4, but it has had some changes to the front end. Obviously the grille perforations are new, the tail lights are new. It's also slightly lower, and the track, which is the distance between the front wheels and the distance between the rear wheels, both of those dimensions are a little bit narrower. Yeah, a bit surprising to some people that a new vehicle is slightly smaller in some ways than its predecessor, but that's also a positive to many people as well. That's a bit of a plus, and Toyota really knows their audience, so maybe that's them giving people what they want. But arguably the biggest change to the new RAV4 is not in the car itself at all, but in its pricing, which compared to previous equivalent models has gone up between $3,000 and $6,000. And if you go for the GR Sport model, the new one, that'll cost nearly $74,000 drive away. It's also a plug-in hybrid, which is new for the RAV4 range, and something that will appeal to some customers who want the extra grunt plus the flexibility of plug-in hybrid power. The boot of the RAV4, there's no real surprise and delight features in the boot. Under the floor of the boot though is something that these days might surprise some people, in that there's a space saver spare tyre. Now a space saver of course is not the ideal spare tyre to have, you want the full size one, but these days with so many SUVs and any car really carrying no spare tyre at all, just a can of goopy stuff and an air pump, it's pleasing to see that they've managed to fit not just the spare tyre here under the floor, but the floor's not raised up like you might see on maybe some other Toyota products. There's also the rear drive motor. This is an all-wheel drive cruiser, so that fits under the floor. Also under the floor of the vehicle is a fuel tank and a battery for the hybrid system. So it's not a bad bit of packaging that they've managed to fit that under the floor and keep the floor flat. And one final thing that I really like about the boot in the RAV4 is I can do this. I fit under here, which is fantastic. I don't have to walk around like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, fiddling around in the back of the car. And the other thing as well, just close your ears, it's pretty loud. But apart from that, the boot of the RAV4 is within expectations. The interior of the RAV4 has had some major changes, although it might not look completely different from the previous one. There are some important differences. The most obvious, of course, is the 12.9-inch infotainment screen, but there's also a 12.3-inch infotainment screen right in front of the driver, and that also now integrates maps into that screen as well, so you don't have to go to the supreme effort of moving your head 20 degrees to look at the one there. You can look at the one right in front of you. The screen is deeper as well, so it's a bit easier for people of more compact dimensions to see over the steering wheel and out the window. There's two charging pads, for example, which we previously only saw on Teslas, and there's also two USB-C charging ports which are 45 watt, which is significantly more powerful than the typical ones that you use for your phone. It means you can charge things like a laptop or maybe even a charging bank as well. It's a bit of a mix, you know, climate control, for example. It's nice to see that there are some hard buttons here for the temperature, but you still need to control the fan via the screen. One upside to that though is that they are fixed in the screen and they can't move. So you know where they're going to be, but they're still on the screen. So it just takes a tiny bit of extra time to find those when you're driving. But nice to see there's a separate volume knob. There's also one on the steering wheel here on the left. Look, it's not as perhaps easy and fast to use as one that's got full dials and knobs for the climate controls. It's not as bad as some other vehicles. So you might say the RAV's a bit in the middle in terms of the ergonomics around the climate controls. The other feature we'll get into later as well is the camera here that looks at the driver and alerts them when there's potential distraction afoot. There are also the controls for drive modes. You can also drive the vehicle on full EV mode as well, which optimises the electric motors over the petrol engine where it can. As far as storage is concerned, the door pockets don't fit a large, big drink bottle. 2 cup holders as standard here. The other quite convenient little storage feature here is a centre console, which can flip-flop either way, depending on requirements, a bit like some politicians. One thing I might say though about the interior, this is a cruiser model, so it's one of the more expensive RAV4 variants, but the interior, it's a lot of grey and black, and it's a pretty dark looking place. A lot of people might not care about that too much, but compared to some of its competitors that are also cheaper, you tend to see a lot more shinier chrome finishes and that sort of thing. If people care about that sort of stuff, that does make the car feel a little bit more luxurious, but clearly Toyota has gone away from that in this cruiser model. So even things like the door handles are more of a gunmetal grey rather than a shiny aluminium type finish. Same with the speaker grills. Pretty ergonomic, good adjustability, and the new seats also make it a little bit more supportive and a pretty comfortable place to be. All right, what is the RAV4 like to drive on Perth roads? You won't be too surprised, of course, to hear that it's not too much different from the previous model, but there have been some changes to make it a bit sharper to drive. So the major change with the RAV is that it now needs 95 RON fuel as opposed to 91 before. There is more torque coming from the front motor. There's also the same amount of torque coming from the petrol engine. It's just much lower on power. So we are seeing a lower overall powertrain output compared to the previous model. The benefit being, of course, that in the urban cycle, it uses only 4.4 litres per 100 in that official test. That is reflected somewhat in real world driving, although we have found that it's using a little bit more than that, about 1 litre more at about 5.4 litres per 100. And the curious bit about that is that that's 4.4 litres per 100. It's using so little fuel that actually costs you less to fuel the car on 95 than the previous one did to fuel the car on 91, because that used 5 litres per 100. You can go for the plug-in hybrid option, which is available in the HSC and the GR Sport models, but of course you're going to have to pay a bit more up front. So if you want to save that fuel and charge your vehicle often, it's going to take a while to offset the extra upfront cost of those cars. There have been some changes to make it a bit sharper to drive. Of course, there's the reduction in power output from the total drivetrain output, so combining the petrol and the electric motor. But that, interestingly, has been compensated for a little bit by Toyota in the way they've tuned the powertrain. The power from the petrol engine's down, the torque from the electric motor is up in the front, and that's helped make the car still reasonably perky to drive, especially in low speed environments. And so they've kept that low speed sharpness, the quick acceleration from standstill. One of the main reasons why this new RAV4 was delayed, it was originally meant to come out in 2025. It took some extra time to make it compliant with the protocols that ANCAP required for the car to get 5 stars. So while we're driving it today, ANCAP has not yet released a rating for the new RAV4. We'd be surprised if it's anything less than 5 stars. Like most new cars these days, if you look carefully, see somewhere on the dash there's a subtly placed camera which is designed to look at the driver and monitor their face and their tilt of their head and their eyes, and get data on whether they're showing signs of distraction. And on the RAV4, it's just on the steering column here, and it's actually been calibrated quite well. So you have to be really not paying attention for that system to activate. We've not seen any false positives at all. So certainly props to Toyota for calibrating a system that's actually useful and not distracting in such a way that you want to turn it off. So what do we like about the new RAV4? Well, the revised interior is important. It's the part of the car you look at the most, and that is an improvement. The fuel economy, at least according to the urban test, is much better than it was in the past, and the revised styling does bring it up to speed with its main rivals. And what do we dislike about the new RAV? Well, power is down 20 kilowatts to 143 kilowatts. The price is a big one as well. You can't get a RAV4 that's new for under $50,000 now. And the climate controls. Can we just have all buttons for the climate controls, please? Toyota has added value to the new RAV4, but it's also added a bit to the price. At the same time though, they've introduced the plug-in hybrid version of the RAV, which gives some people who are looking for a RAV a reason to also stay within the Toyota brand. And for that reason, we reckon the RAV's worth a look.